Homeowner association president loses it when I deny her access to my land. I grew up on a farm, and those were some of the best years of my childhood. There was something about the rhythm of farm life, the early mornings, the long days, and the quiet of the countryside that I'll always cherish. My parents ran a small, self-sufficient land, and while it was hard work, it was rewarding. There was never any rush, no constant sound from the city, and no pressure to conform to anyone's idea of success. It was just us, the fields, and the animals. And it felt like the world slowed down a little when I was there. As I grew older, I realized I wanted to continue that path for myself. I didn't want to be stuck in the fast-paced world of city living after a few years of trying to figure things out in the town. I decided it was time to buy my own land. I wanted to get back to that peaceful, grounded life I had known as a child, and owning a farm of my own felt like the next goal. It took a while to find the right place, but eventually, I found a plot of land far from the bustle of any town or suburban area. It wasn't much, just a few acres, but it was mine. No neighbors too close, no urban sprawl encroaching in the distance, just open fields and a chance to build something new. The first few days on the farm were everything I had hoped for. It wasn't fancy, but it didn't need to be. I spent my time working on the barn and just enjoying the quiet. It was the kind of life where you could hear yourself think, where you could feel the seasons change with every step you took on the land. It felt like I had finally found my place again, like I had come home. That was until Linda showed up. It was a calm morning, just like any other. I was repairing the gate near the front of the land, trying to fix some of the damage from a storm the week before. It was a bit of a mess, but I didn't mind the work. I was about halfway through when I noticed a vehicle pulling up to the farm not too far from where I was standing. It was a bright, shiny car. Definitely not something you'd expect to see out here in the middle of nowhere. At first, I figured it might be someone lost, but then I saw the lady get out of the car, smiling like she knew me. "Hi there," she called out as she walked toward me. "I'm Linda, the president of the homeowner association for the neighborhood just down the road. I wanted to stop by and introduce myself." I wiped my hands on a cloth, trying to mask my annoyance. I didn't know what kind of homeowner association would be so bold as to approach someone who clearly wasn't in their area, but I kept my tone polite. "Nice to meet you, Linda. I'm actually not part of the homeowner association. My farm is outside your neighborhood's control." "Oh, I know that," she said, her smile never fading. "I just thought it would be nice to introduce myself. It's always good to have a friendly bond with your neighbors, right? We all benefit when the area looks well maintained and coordinated." I wasn't sure where this was going, but I wasn't about to get involved in anything. "I appreciate the thought, but I don't really plan on joining any groups. I've always preferred to keep to myself." Linda didn't seem bothered by my response at all. In fact, she looked almost pleased. "Of course, I totally get it, but, it's always nice when the area looks organized. The homeowner association has some great programs for maintaining properties, and we'd love to help out if you ever change your mind. Just let me know." I could tell this wasn't just a casual visit. It was her way of planting a thought, one that I had no interest in growing. Still, I didn't want to come across as rude, so I just nodded and thanked her for stopping by as she headed back to her car. She waved one last time, promising to keep in touch. After that, I tried to brush off the meeting. I was here for the land, the peace, and the quiet. Nothing more. The last thing I needed was to get tangled up in any sort of group politics or community obligations. But as I soon realized, that wouldn't be the last time I saw Linda. It was just a few days later when she returned. This time she had a box in her hands, and there was a warm, almost overly cheerful vibe to her visit. I thought, "You might like some cookies," she said, holding up the box with a smile that seemed a little too wide. "The neighborhood just had a bake sale, and I figured you'd appreciate the gesture. After all, it's always nice to keep good relations with neighbors." Don't you think I felt a twinge of frustration? I wasn't sure what her plan was, but it was clear she wasn't going to take no for an answer. "Thanks, but I really don't need any cookies," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "I've got things covered here." "Oh, I'm sure you do," she replied, still with that bright smile. But you know, the homeowner association offers so many wonderful resources. We have programs for property maintenance, yard care, improvements, things like that. I'm sure you'd benefit from being part of the association. I shook my head. I really prefer to do things on my own. I don't need any assistance. Linda wasn't dissuaded. Well, you never know. A little organization can go a long way. If you change your mind, don't hesitate to reach out. We're here to assist. With that, she left again, promising to stay in touch. As I watched her drive away, I couldn't help but feel like something wasn't right. This wasn't just a friendly gesture. Linda wasn't trying to welcome me to the area. She was trying to pull me into something I had no interest in, and I had no intention of getting involved. But it seemed like Linda wasn't going to make it simple for me to just be left alone. The next time I saw Linda, it was in the middle of one of those long, tiring days when I was fixing up the barn. I had been working non-stop to get things in place, and as usual, I was feeling a little drained. That's when I saw her car pull up again, almost as if she had an internal clock that told her when I was occupied and exhausted. She always seemed to arrive just when I was on the edge of irritation, and yet there she was, smiling and walking toward me with that same overzealous cheerfulness. "Hi there, how's everything going?" she asked as she approached, holding up a clipboard as though she was about to take notes on something. Her grin was as wide as ever, but it seemed like there was an edge to it this time, like she was almost too eager to see me. "Everything's fine," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. I wasn't in the mood for any more chatter. I was deep into a project, and the last thing I wanted was for her to continue pressuring me to join the homeowner association. "I see you're working hard out here. You know, the homeowner association has a great yard care program." She began as if the words were prepared. "We offer support with everything from watering to upkeep. You might not realize it, but some of the nearby properties could benefit from a little maintenance. It wouldn't hurt to be part of the association." I could feel the irritation starting to rise. It was the same talk as before, only this time it felt more intrusive. "I really don't need help with anything," I said, trying to stay calm. "I've got things under control." Linda didn't seem deterred at all. In fact, her grin widened even more. That was possible. "Well, I just wanted to offer. You know, a unified neighborhood is good for everyone. We all work together to make things look organized. It's about building a community, and being a part of the homeowner association can really help you with that." I shook my head, unable to keep the annoyance out of my voice this time. "I don't want to be part of any neighborhood group. I moved out here to avoid that sort of thing. I'm not interested." Linda paused as if considering my words. Then in a voice that was a little too smooth, she said, "I understand. But just so you know, the homeowner association has a way of helping properties look similar. We want everyone's land to look proper, and it's easier to do that when everyone is on the same side. There's a certain expectation we all aim for, you know." Her tone was almost like a gentle warning, as if I didn't fully grasp the unspoken guidelines of living here. I was starting to feel like I was being pushed into a corner, and that made my decision clear. I needed to set limits. "Linda," I said, my voice firm, "I'm not interested in joining your homeowner association, and I don't want any more visits from you. I appreciate your concern, but I've made my choice. Please respect that." She stood there for a moment, blinking as though she hadn't expected such a direct response. Then she smiled again. This time, it seemed more like a forced smile of acceptance. "Of course, I respect that. I just thought I'd offer. But if you ever change your mind, you know where to find me." With that, she turned and left, walking back to her car. I watched her go, still feeling uneasy. It was the third time she had come, and each time she seemed more persistent. It wasn't just casual, neighborly interest anymore. It felt like pressure, like she was trying to push me into joining. I tried to focus on the work at hand, but Linda's visits were starting to leave a bad taste in my mouth. It wasn't that I minded people being friendly. I had grown up with that kind of neighborly spirit on the farm. But there was something about the way Linda operated that didn't sit right with me. She was pushy, and her persistence bordered on intrusive. It wasn't the kind of connection I had in mind when I moved to the land. A few days passed in relative peace, and I thought maybe Linda had finally taken the message. I went about my usual routine of working on the land, fixing up the house, and spending time outside. But, as with everything else, peace never seemed to last. One afternoon, as I was sitting on the porch enjoying a rare moment of calm, I saw a couple of cars parked by the edge of the land. At first, I thought they were just lost, but as I got closer, I saw that they were people I didn't recognize. Two men and a woman, all walking slowly along the edge of the land, looking at the fields as if they were inspecting it. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just a random event. They were on my property, and I had no idea who they were. I walked over to them, trying to keep my composure. "Excuse me," I said, my voice sharp. "Can I help you?" The lady looked up and smiled, clearly not bothered by the fact that she was trespassing. "Oh, hi. We're just checking out the land. Linda said it was okay to walk around here." I blinked in shock. "What? No, this land is private property. It's not open to the public." The man who was with her seemed a little nervous. "Oh, sorry. We didn't mean to bother. Linda just mentioned that this area could be enjoyed by the community." I felt my blood start to boil. Linda again. I was done being nice. No one, including Linda, has authority to give anyone access to this property, I said, my voice low but strong. "This land is mine. It's not part of your homeowner association, and it's not open for anyone to wander around in. Got it?" The woman nodded, her expression apologetic, but I could tell she wasn't taking me seriously. She quickly muttered an apology and ushered the others back to their vehicles. But the whole interaction left me frustrated. It was clear Linda had told them this land was open for anyone to use, and that kind of disrespect was something I couldn't ignore. I immediately went inside and grabbed my phone, calling Linda. I wasn't going to let this slide. She picked up on the second ring, her voice cheerful as always. "Hey, there. I hope everything's good for you, Linda," I said, my tone serious. "I just caught a group of people walking on my property. They said you told them it was okay to be here. I'm not pleased about this." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Oh, well, I'm sure it was just a mistake," she said, her voice too calm for my liking. "I might have mentioned the land, but I didn't mean for anyone to actually enter. If it caused any confusion, I'm sorry." I could feel the anger rising again. "This isn't just a misunderstanding, Linda. You don't get to tell people they can walk around on my land. I'm done being nice. If this continues, I'll be taking further action." There was a brief silence on the line before Linda spoke again. "Understand," she said, her tone now slightly colder. "I'll make sure this doesn't happen again, but just so you know, the homeowner association could help with situations like this." "I don't want your homeowner association." "Linda, please stop trying to involve me." She gave a short, forced laugh. "All right, I'll respect your wishes, but if you ever change your mind." I ended the call before she could finish. The next morning, I found a letter in my mailbox, tucked between a pile of ads and an announcement for a nearby farm equipment sale. The envelope was official looking, with the bold letters "Homeowner Association" stamped across the top. My stomach tightened as I recognized the return address. It was Linda's neighborhood. The letter inside was like a shock to the face. It accused me of violating neighborhood standards, specifically mentioning the condition of my land and my refusal to join the homeowner association. It was a list of complaints, vague but accusing, suggesting that my property was disrupting the harmony of the area. They cited maintenance issues and claimed that my land didn't meet community standards. I was furious. My property was fine. It was my right how to maintain it, and I wasn't bound to anyone's rules but my own. The letter seemed like a petty attempt to force me into joining, but it was also a sign that they were trying to escalate things. I'd had enough of this, enough of the hidden threats and the intrusion on my land. I didn't even reply immediately. Instead, I focused on the tasks I had planned for the day, hoping that maybe Linda and her homeowner association would get the message. But it didn't end there. 2 days later, Linda showed up again, this time with the clipboard in hand and a determined look on her face. "Hi there," she said, that unnerving smile still fixed on her face. "I've got some great news. The neighborhood is really interested in making sure everyone's property is well maintained, and I've gathered a petition from some of the homeowner association members. We'd really appreciate it if you'd allow the community to access your land for regular inspections. We want to keep things looking neat and coordinated around here." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "What are you saying?" I snapped. "I've told you before, I'm not part of the homeowner association, and I'm not interested in any of your community maintenance programs." Linda's smile didn't fade. "Oh, I understand," she said, nodding casually. "But, it would really help the neighborhood if your land were accessible to the homeowner association for checks and upkeep after all. We all benefit when everything looks consistent. Don't you agree?" I took a deep breath, trying to control my frustration. "No, Linda. I don't think that at all. This is my property, and I have every right to keep it private." She didn't seem to hear me well. "That's what the petition is about. If you just sign here, we can make sure everything stays in line with the neighborhood standards. It's just a small request, really." I didn't even look at the clipboard. "I'm not signing anything," I said firmly, glaring at her. "And I'm not allowing anyone on my property, either." Linda paused, a flicker of something like irritation crossing her face, but it disappeared almost instantly. She straightened up, her look returning to one of sickly kindness. "Of course, I'll leave this with you, just in case you change your mind." She handed me the clipboard, and I shoved it back into her hands. Without another word, she turned and walked back to her vehicle. As I stood there staring after her, my anger reached new levels. I had made it clear, didn't want any connection with the homeowner association, but Linda wasn't just crossing boundaries, she was breaking them. It was becoming obvious that she wasn't going to stop until she got what she wanted. 2 days after this event, the vandalism started. I went to check the barriers around the property, making sure everything was secure after the previous storm, when I noticed something unusual. One of the gates was wide open, and the fence had been damaged, bent in places, almost as though someone had been trying to break through. As I moved along the border, it got worse. In one spot, the fence had been completely cut, leaving a large hole in the otherwise protected boundary. And to make matters worse, I found a trail of fresh tire marks leading into the land from the road. I was furious. This wasn't an accident. This was intentional. Someone had done this on purpose. As I made my way toward the fields, I found more harm. Crops crushed underfoot, a pile of garbage dumped just past the garden. It looked like someone had just tossed their trash out here as though it was their own dumping ground. My hands clenched into fists as I walked back toward the house, trying to think through what I should do next. I checked the mailbox. There it was. Another notice from the homeowner association. This one was even more aggressive than the last, claiming that my fence was violating homeowner association rules and invading on their land. It was absurd. I knew the borders of my property. I checked them when I bought the farm. There was no chance my fence was on their land. But their letter suggested otherwise, and they demanded that I fix the issue immediately. I stared at the notice, feeling my frustration rise. I wasn't going to let Linda and her homeowner association control me any longer. I needed proof that the fence was correct, that my borders were exact. The next morning, I hired a surveyor. The expert was thorough and a lot more detailed than I had expected. He spent the entire day mapping out the borders, measuring distances, and confirming the land. After he finished, he pulled me aside with the findings. The fence, he told me, was perfectly in line with the land. It didn't invade on anyone's area, but there was something else. He pointed out a section of landscaping on my land, trees, shrubs, and a small garden that was clearly part of the homeowner association's area. The landscaping extended a few feet into my land, just enough to be a concern. It wasn't a huge problem, but it was enough to show that the homeowner association had been overstepping on my land, just as they had tried to claim I was doing with my fence. Armed with this information, I decided it was time to take action. I sat down and wrote a formal notice demanding that Linda and the homeowner association stop their harassment and remove their landscaping from my property. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. I sent the notice the next day, hoping it would be the end of things. The last few weeks had felt like a storm about to hit, and I was waiting for that moment when everything would come to a climax. The homeowner association's persistent harassment, the damage, the lies. It all seemed to be building towards something bigger. I wasn't just dealing with A woman who wanted to expand her little group. Linda was up to something far more serious, and I was getting closer to finding out exactly what that was. One afternoon, as I was fixing the damage to the fence again, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. There, just outside the land, parked on the side of the road, was Linda's car, and right beside it were two other vehicles I didn't recognize. My heart skipped a beat as I watched Linda step out of her car, flanked by the same two people who had trespassed on my land weeks earlier. They were walking across my property, measuring something, taking notes, and talking in low voices. I grabbed my phone and quietly took a few photos, then switched on the security cameras. I wasn't going to let this slip by without recording it. As I watched them, I felt the familiar anger in my stomach. They were measuring and marking something out. Were they planning something? What had Linda been up to all this time? The next few days were a blur. I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd seen. It wasn't just suspicious. It was wrong. I dug through my documents, looking for anything that might explain what Linda had been doing. Then, in the middle of all the mess, I made the discovery that I knew would change everything. Linda had submitted an annexation request to the local government, claiming that my land was unused. She'd argued that it would be better off as part of the homeowner association's control, and had even gone so far as to suggest that it would benefit the community to claim the land. I felt the floor drop out from under me. She'd been setting this up for months, trying to influence local officials into giving her power over my property. I knew I had to respond, and I had to act quickly. With the security footage, the survey findings that showed my borders were accurate, and all the evidence of the harassment and damage, I put everything together. I made copies of the recordings, wrote up a timeline of everything that had happened, and included the request as proof. It was time to take this battle public. I turned to social media first. It wasn't just the homeowner association I was fighting anymore. It was Linda and her schemes that I was exposing. I uploaded the security footage showing Linda and her group on my property and shared the papers that proved her dishonest dealings. Almost immediately, the post went viral. People I didn't even know started sharing it, commenting, and tagging others. Neighbors who had signed the petition for community access began reaching out to apologize. They had been misled, and now they understood the truth. The community that Linda had tried to manipulate was starting to see her for who she really was. It didn't take long for Linda to realize the disaster she had caused. She had misjudged the trust people had in her. Those who had once looked up to her as the kind, welcoming face of the homeowner association were now turning against her, shocked by the lies she had told them. I wasn't the only one defending my rights anymore. People who had been convinced by her words were now rallying to my side. They hadn't known the full truth of her actions, and once they saw the facts, they were outraged. But Linda didn't give up. She couldn't. Her ego wouldn't let her. What she didn't count on, though, was that I wasn't finished yet. I had more than just public support on my side. A few days after the online storm hit, the local authorities contacted me. They had launched an inquiry into Linda's actions, and what they discovered was even worse than I could have imagined. Linda hadn't just lied about the annexation request. She had used homeowner association funds to further her own gain, diverting money that was supposed to help the community toward her personal plans. The investigation uncovered false reports, improper use of homeowner association resources, and a series of other violations that left her no room to escape the results. Linda was arrested for trespassing, misconduct, and financial fraud. She was forced to step down as the homeowner association leader, and her actions were examined in a way that left her no chance to regain any trust. The homeowner association had no choice but to remove her, and that was the moment everything shifted. The investigation into her land grab didn't stop with her removal from the homeowner association. It turned out that part of the landscaping the homeowner association had placed on my property without my permission was actually a violation of property laws. It wasn't just trespassing. It was a clear encroachment. The survey had shown it. But now, the authorities were taking action. The homeowner association board, under new management, agreed to remove the landscaping that had unlawfully been placed on my land. They had no choice. It was the right thing to do, and I made sure to record every step of the process, ensuring that there was no further overreach. With Linda out of the way, I finally had the freedom I had worked so hard to defend. In the weeks that followed, things returned to a peaceful routine.